Burkina Faso. A country that doesn't always make global headlines, but when it does, oh boy, you better pay attention. Because right now, there's a young leader shaking things up in a way that has the world watching. Meet Ibrahim Traoré, the 35-year-old captain who went from an army officer to the president of Burkina Faso almost overnight. And trust me, his story is anything but ordinary. Imagine this: one day, you're just an officer doing your job, and the next, you're leading a whole country in the middle of a crisis. That's exactly what happened to Ibrahim Traoré. But here's the real question: how did a young soldier rise to power so quickly? And more importantly, how is he steering Burkina Faso through one of its toughest times? To understand why Traoré is such a big deal, we first need to look at the situation in Burkina Faso before he took over. Spoiler alert, it wasn't great. The country had been struggling with relentless terrorist attacks, economic troubles, and political instability. People were fed up. Corruption was high, security was low, and the previous leadership wasn't exactly winning any popularity contests. So when Traoré and his group of soldiers staged a coup in September 2022, they weren't met with resistance. Instead, many people saw them as a breath of fresh air. Now, let's talk about the man himself. Who is Ibrahim Traoré, and what makes him so different from the usual politicians? Well, first of all, he's young, like really young for a head of state. At 35, he became the world's youngest sitting president. And unlike the traditional politicians who spend years climbing the political ladder, Traoré came in with military boots and a no-nonsense attitude. He's direct, he's strategic, and he doesn't waste time with long-winded speeches full of empty promises. From the moment he took office, it was clear he meant business. One of his first moves? Strengthening Burkina Faso security forces. See, terrorist groups like Al-Qaeda and ISIS had turned parts of the country into a war zone. People were living in fear, entire villages were abandoned, and the economy was suffering. Traoré didn't just sit around talking about the problem, he started recruiting more soldiers, securing weapons, and even building alliances with neighboring countries to fight terrorism together. And let's be real, that's the kind of leadership you need when your country is under attack. But here's where things get really interesting. Unlike many African leaders who lean heavily on Western support, Traoré took a different route. He started looking toward Russia for military cooperation, something that sent shockwaves through the international community. The West wasn't too happy about it, but Traoré didn't seem to care. He made it clear that Burkina Faso's priority was its own survival, not pleasing foreign powers. And let's talk about his relationship with the people. This guy doesn't hide behind big government offices or fancy suits. He's out there in the field, visiting soldiers, talking to citizens, and making it clear that he's not just some distant leader who sits in an air-conditioned palace while the country burns. His hands-on approach has earned him massive support, especially among the youth, who see him as a symbol of change. Of course, not everyone is on board with his leadership style. Some critics argue that his government lacks transparency, and others worry about what happens once his military-led transition period is over. Will he step down peacefully, or will he hold on to power like so many before him? That's the million-dollar question, and honestly, only time will tell. What's undeniable, though, is that Ibrahim Traoré has already left a mark on Burkina Faso's history. Whether you see him as a bold leader saving his country or a military strongman playing a dangerous game, one thing is for sure: he's not someone you can ignore. So, what do you think? Is Ibrahim Traoré the leader Burkina Faso needs, or is his approach too risky? Let's talk about it in the comments. And if you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss a story like this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.